You're listening to On Fire Concerts Artist Interview Series with your host, Ron Johnson.
Hey folks, this is Ron here, and I am here today with a gentleman that, if you're in country music, needs no introduction, I'm sure, but Mr. Jay Jackson, and people affectionately refer to him as Papa J.
There you go.
And I am so grateful for you to be here today.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for inviting us into your home to do this.
Glad to have you here, sir.
This is one interview, folks, that of all the interviews I've done, this is one that I've been trying for a long time to get, and schedules just couldn't do, but this is amazing. So it's a little different today, but the history that you have is simply amazing to me.
Well, it's been an interesting ride for a lot of years, and the secret's known a lot of people's living a long time.
that is so true.
It's kind of amazing to me. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and talking about my parents, and I said, "Well, my dad was born in 1898," and that just kind of hit them and me too, like 1898. I mean, we done been through the 1900s, and I was born in 1935, which adds up to 88 and a half, whatever it is, almost heading for 89. And I still feel pretty good. I still get up in the morning, and I get up under my own steam, and I walk in there and brush my original teeth and comb my original hair and take my own shower and dress in clothes that I run through the laundry myself. So I figured I've had a pretty good run at it. Maybe be able to make 88 years, and I can still go out there and get in my car and run to Walmart if I need to.
I believe between you and William Golden, I said at 88, I hope I'm able to set up.
Well,
yeah,
that's the way I feel. And, I get up, like this morning I woke up, man, my hands are hurting. They're tingling, and I've been to a nerve doctor and everything else, and they tell me what I need to do, operation here and operation there. I don't do that anymore. But anyway, it just every day I don't feel great, but I thank the Lord every day. I wake up and realize I'm still alive, and I can crawl out of that bed and get up and do whatever I need to do. As long as I can do that, I want to stay here.
Well, it's like I tell people these days, after 2010, I had open heart and different things. And I tell people I learned at that time, and I'm not but 64. I learned at that time every day above ground is a good day.
It's a good one. And I love every one of them. And I've lived an interesting life. I had some dreams when I was a kid. My dad was an old country preacher, and I was born in Haskell, Oklahoma on 14th of April in 1935, and you can check this, you can Google it and find out a lot about it, but the biggest dust storm that ever hit Oklahoma hit on April the 14th, 1935, and there was no vegetation left. My dad was a sharecropper in a cotton field, and I was born in a sharecropper shack in the middle of a cotton field.
That's amazing.
And that deal, I said, I didn't have nothing to do with that dust storm. But I was born there, and the only house, well, after that, my dad was preaching some then, but he wasn't full time. He was raising that cotton patch, and my brother was 2 years older than me. And I don't know if you ever heard of Gene Jackson, but he was a preacher, and he preached all around the world. My dad's ministry was starting churches, getting big enough to pay a pastor and move on somewhere else to start another. So that's the kind of life I lived. And our only home until I was in the middle of the third grade, our only home was a 10 by 10 Army surplus tent. And we had a 33 Chevrolet. Well, after that dust storm, I got a little ahead of myself. He decided that he needed to be in the ministry full time. So we left from Haskell, Oklahoma. Bald Hill actually was the community I was born in. And somebody told me not long ago that's familiar with that area, said there's one building left in Bald Hill, and it wasn't an incorporated town, it was a community. But anyway, I've kind of kept up with it. I haven't been back there, but other people have told me. But anyway, we left that area and he started preaching full time. So our home we went from that sharecropper shack to 10 by 10 Army surplus tent.
I remember you telling me one time, and it just, like I said, the story and the history is amazing to me, and made me think back to my dad telling me stories. And as kids, you say, someone such as yourself tells somebody younger than me that didn't experience all that, think, yeah. But you were telling me, your home was where your dad pitched his tent to preach in.
Wherever we were.
Yeah.
He'd pitch that thing beside the church, or if they had a parsonage where the pastor lived, pitch it close to that.
Right.
Because usually the outhouse was right behind it.
Sure.
Wanted to have that convenience. And wherever the sun went down is where we lived. And we'd be on our way somewhere to revival. And that tent, he built this trailer out of an axle that he got at a junkyard. It came out of a Model T Ford, which most people now don't even know what a Model T Ford is. But anyway, that was about what was in the junkyards, because that was the first cars that started showing up, And he went to a lumber yard and bought the lumber, and his old rough sawn lumber. You get splinters off of it if you weren't careful.
Right.
But everything we owned was in that trailer. And the top thing in there, before a tarpaulin that protected and kept it all dry, top thing in there was that Army tent. So wherever we were at sundown or when he was tired of driving, pull over beside the road, and hopefully under an old gas station that was abandoned or something, some kind of a shelter. We'd pitch that tent, and that was our home for the night. And in 1944, we left Sapulpa, Oklahoma, going to California. He had a couple of preacher friends that had moved out there, and they started churches, and they called him. They didn't call. We didn't have a telephone. We was writing letters. And we'd pick up mail at general delivery, whatever town was going to be close to. I don't even know if they still
and now, I'm about to say, now who would even know what that is these days?
I don't think they do it.
Right.
They used to, if you was traveling or moving around a lot, you could have, like if we knew we were going to Corona, California, we could tell you, write us in care of general delivery in Corona, California.
Right.
You send us a letter there, we get there, we go in the post office, say, I'm here to pick up general delivery for Jay Jackson.
Right.
I said, well, okay, they go get your mail. If you had some,
I don't know that they do that today, because nobody would know what it is.
This is messed up on what they deliver anyway. I ain't gonna tell them where it wind up. But anyway, we took off. My dad had $44. It was in 1944, and we stopped at the store and got a stick of bologna and a box of crackers, jar of olives, because they'd keep anything. You had to buy your groceries and travel.
Right.
Didn't have any way to keep them cool. And used to, people would take food. They didn't have refrigerators either. They'd put it down in the well where they drew water. You put your food in the bucket, put it down, and it kept it cool, cool enough it didn't spoil. But that we'd leave. We had our restaurant was with us, because it was a stick of bologna and a box of crackers, and you get a loaf of bread. But the bread, you'd eat that pretty quick,
Right.
And then you'd eat crackers and bologna, and you get a jar of mustard, because mayonnaise didn't travel well, after you open it. But anyway, that's kind of the life we lived, and we lived that for, well, like I said, I was in the middle of the third grade, which would make you 8 or 9 years old. And when we got to California, it took 6 days to get there. And my dad, we came to an orange grove, and people were out there picking oranges. My dad just pulled over beside the road, and he turned around, he parked. And he said, boys, he said, old gas tank is sitting on red, which that means it's about out of gas.
Right.
And he said, my pockets ain't got nothing but a little bit of jingle in it. That means we're out of money. And that just scared the daylights out of me. We didn't know nobody. We done left everybody we knew 1,800 miles behind us.
Back in Oklahoma.
And we in California, we out of money, we out of gasoline. And he said, we out of bologna. And I remember how that really scared me. I thought, what in the world are we going to do? And he said, we're going to go over here and go get out of this car and go walk over there. And he said, He said, I've already prayed about it. He said, we're going to see if we can get a job picking oranges. And we had never even seen an orange growing on a tree. So he walks over, and we all do. My mother, my brother, and my dad, and I. And my dad said he was weighing, there was a guy at a wagon, he was weighing these oranges in. And he was handing the money back when they weighed the oranges in. And so he waited till he got through taking care of those people. He said, sir, are you hiring any pickers today? He said, yes, sir, all we can get. Pitched him 2 kids' bags and 2 adult bags. Because they didn't want the oranges dragging the ground.
Right.
Shorter bags. So we picked oranges till it was so dark you couldn't see the trees, much less the oranges on. And so the guy said, he said, y'all done real good today. He said, would you like to pick again tomorrow? And my dad said, man, we'd like to pick as long as we can. And he said, we're looking 3 or 4 more weeks in this grove. He said, I'd like for you to stay and pick all the way through it. And we did make a few bucks, you know. So my dad asked him if he could pitch a tent. He told me, he said, we're in here from Oklahoma. We don't have a place to stay. He said, we got a tent with us. We just pitch a tent in this orange grove, stay you through if we can. He said, man, just find a place to where we pull trees out, set it up. He said, just don't start an open fire, set the whole place on fire. So we were rich enough to have a Coleman 2-burner cook stove. We had a Coleman lantern hung out in the middle of the tent, so we set up. So anyway, we wound up staying there and made enough money to build a house trailer. So he did that. He bought a frame off a wreck truck, another junkyard. He already had experience with junkyards. And we built a house trailer. And I've still got some pictures of that. But anyway, that's the kind of start I had in my life. And I'd always dreamed about stuff, you know. And my brother and I both learned to play guitars as soon as we could reach around the neck one. My dad, driving down the road, he taught us how to sing harmony. And so we sing pretty good. We sung with him in church. And that gave him an edge on most preachers because we pick a little bit and sing a little bit. And my brother was 2 years older than me, so he was quite a bit taller than me. And he stood him on a grape crate. They were made out of wood then. They shipped all fruit in wooden boxes. And he put me on an apple crate because it was about this tall, and the grape crate was about that tall, but made up for the height. So we'd stand up there and sing harmony with my dad in the churches, you know. And we done that until, we sung with him until we was 15, 16 years old, I guess.
And traveling across the country, you know, like you said, 3rd grade, 4th grade, whatever it was, and you didn't have YouTube, and you didn't have Nintendos.
No, our deal, like I said, was riding down the road. He'd teach us how to sing parts, and he said, now, Jay, here's what you need to sing, and he'd sing it for me. He did know all the parts.
Right.
And then he'd tell me to sing it back to him. And, you know, if I missed a note, he'd say, okay, that 3rd word you missed, that should go a little higher, a little lower. And he wasn't a teacher. He had an 8th grade education.
Right.
Of course, in Oklahoma at that time, he did have a teaching certificate. He could taught school if he wanted to with an 8th grade education. And he never did. I mean, he started preaching when he was fairly young.
But kids nowadays, you wouldn't have.
Oh, they got Nintendo games.
Yeah, I did.
In our car right now, we've had that car now a year or so, and there's 2 televisions in the back. We've never turned. I don't even know how to turn them on, and I don't care when we didn't need that.
When I was a kid, I mean, like I said, I'm just 64, but I remember my mother and my grandmother even when she would watch us. Our games or excitement was they lock the front door till you. We'll let you in when we want you.
Yeah, play outside till we're ready.
You make your own games.
Well, that's what we did too, and you know, looking back on that and looking at today's teenagers, they worry me a little bit. They got a cell phone in their pocket. They got all kinds of electronic games they play. Some of which not too
too good.
Yeah, they probably shouldn't be playing that. But and the standards are a lot lower now. Like language, you know, if you said a heck or a darn, I mean, get that old tail ready for a razor strap.
That's right.
And that stuff is absent from the home anymore. And of course, we have one son, and I don't remember ever getting a belt to him, but we taught him how you act and what to do.
And Jay, I think the world of it. He's always been good to me.
Yeah. You know, he's never drank, never smoked, and I thank the Lord for that. I've never told him not to. In fact, when he was a young kid and everybody was smoking, I said, man, I wish you wouldn't smoke.
Yeah.
If you feel like you got to, don't sneak around and hide, do the crap. I didn't like that.
It's like my dad used to tell us, if you don't lie to me, because if you lie to me, I'm gonna catch you.
That's too offensive.
He said, if you don't want me to know something, just tell me it ain't none of my business. He said, you might still get in trouble. But so you were in when y'all were in California, and I may be jumping ahead, but if I am, just tell me. When you got into the radio?
Well, what I actually the radio programs I had were in Crossett, Arkansas, where I graduated from high school.
I thought it was
just... Well, what happened? We went to California in '44. We stayed there for 3 years, 7 years. My dad held revivals all up and down California. Then he took a church. There'd been a church there, and the building was standing there, and the old parsons were standing there, and they hadn't had a pastor in years and hadn't had church there. But they wrote my dad a letter and asked him if he'd consider going there and trying to revive that church. So back then they prayed about everything they done. They didn't say, send me your benefit package and let me look that over and then we'll pray about it. See if we can feel the Lord guiding us. They'd base it on how much a week you're going to pay him. If you got 2 new suits at Christmas time and the page car but that stuff wasn't even consideration back then.
It was just if we felt led to be there.
You actually prayed about it, and if you felt the Lord was leading you and that you could do work for him, you went. If you didn't, you didn't do it. So he felt like that's what they should do. And he had bought this bus from Warner Brothers Pictures. And we was living in this trailer we built. The trailer was 8 by 20. But the tent was 10 by 10, so we gained a little square footage. And we thought we died one day moving that trailer. And these people let us park it behind their house. And they had a bathroom on their back porch, and we shared it with them. They got up from 7 to 8. They had it from 8. We had it. And that was scheduled. They ran on, and we did too. And we met them at church. There's good folks, and they wouldn't take any money for it. They just let us do it. So when we left there, we left the trailer sitting there, and they rented it out. So they had a little rental property. So it come out good for everybody. But he built a motorhome inside that bus. And that's what we left California, and that's what my brother and I learned to drive on. It was that old 35 Chevrolet bus. And when we got to Arkansas, he was trying to build that church. So he took all that luxurious motorhome fitting out of there, put benches down both sides and one down the middle. And we could haul 28 people in it. So my brother and I, we didn't have a driver's license. I was 13, he was 15. And we drove that thing anywhere. And we'd drive around the neighborhood, just pick people up, bring them to church. And we did that the whole time we lived there. Then he got that church going pretty good, went to Monticello, Arkansas, and done the same thing. And went to Crossett, done the same thing. And that's where we lived when I graduated from high school.
Okay.
And that was in 1953. But I was picking pretty good then. My brother was too. But he was out of school and he went back to California. And I had a little band, and we played for little old events around town and all that kind of stuff. And we played at all the high school meetings where all the school came in the gym, and you sat there and played. And this guy just bought the radio station right next door to the school. And a guy from New York had moved down there and bought that radio station. He had a son that had enrolled in school in Crossett. And just a day or two after he came there, we played in one of these assembly programs at school. All the students were in there, 900 and something of them. And so he goes home, tells his dad, he said, man, there's a guy over there played music today, and he was really good. I had a band in there, and it sounded good. He said, really? He said, well, I'm thinking about putting some live music on the radio. And he said, tell him to come over here and talk to me. So I rode the school bus to school, and it's 7 miles. If you missed the bus, you're out to the side of the road and you hitchhike. But people would pick you up then.
Yeah.
That's before all this robbing and killing started with hitchhikers. But anyway, he come and looked me up the next day and said, "Man, my dad wants you to stop over there. He wants to talk to you about a live radio program." And that was the only radio station in Southeast Arkansas. And so, boy, as soon as school was out, man, I took off over. And I did miss the bus. But one of the guys that played with me in that band, his daddy was a preacher too. He was a Church of God preacher, and he had Church of God. My dad had an Assembly of God church there. And his daddy had a car, and he could get it anytime he wanted. So from the radio station, I called him. They had a telephone. I called him and I said, "Man, can you get your dad's car and pick me up at the radio station, give me a ride?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "What are you doing at the radio station?" I said, "I'm over here trying to get us a place to play." So anyway, Julian Hayes was the guy's name at that radio station. He said, "Man, my son was he said he was knocked out with the way y'all played and sung." He said, "Act like a professional band, you know." And he said, "What's the name of your group?" And I said, "Oh, we don't have a name, you know." I said, "We just play at school and little events every now and then at the park, you know. Somebody call wants to come over and play, and we do." I said, "We play and sing church more than we do anything." And he said, "Well, I tell you what," he said, "Can you play 30 minutes?" And I said, "Lord, yeah, we can do that easy." And he said, "Well, be over here Saturday ready to play at 12 noon. And he said, I'll come on and I'll read the news for 5 minutes. And then he said, y'all be ready to play." Then he said, "I'm going to ask people to let us know if they'd like to hear that every Saturday. And if we get enough mail," he said, "I'll have you come in here and play every Saturday." And he said, "I don't pay you to do it, but I give you the time and you can sell spots. And the money you get for selling spots, you can keep." And I said, "How much you get for spots?" And he said, "Oh, you can get $5 or $10 a piece for them real easy." Now, this was 1952. So all I heard was 10.
10. Yeah.
And so I told him, I said, "We'll be here Saturday." So I called them boys. And one of them was Lloyd Brown, the one who his daddy was Church of God preacher. And so I called him first because he did have access to that car. So if I couldn't get my dad's car, we had 2 shots in the car, but made sure he is there. So anyway, we wound up. That Saturday we was over there, man, and we was ready to pick. And I'd noticed he'd pick up that phone. There was a little glass window, and he was in there, and he was the owner of the station. He was the engineer. He was a receptionist.
He did it all.
He done it all. And the station was that little control room over there. There's one big room twice as big as this, with an old carpet on the floor. It's ugly old carpet. One microphone standing up in the middle and an upright piano against that wall over there. That was the studio. They had crates all over the ceiling and all the walls. That was your soundproofing. And anyway, we done that show, and after it was over, he told me, he said, "Boy, I've been getting phone calls." And he said, "I didn't even ask for phone calls. I asked him to write, send a card, letter in, let us know what you think about it, and if you'd like to hear them every Saturday." So he got a bushel basket full of mail. And almost all of it was saying, yeah, they'd like to hear us. So for 2 years, I had a radio program on that station. And at first, my daddy was Assembly of God preacher. They were Pentecostal folks, and everybody liked to call us holy rollers, which used to pee me off. And I had more fights over being called a holy roller than I did anything else my whole school lifetime. But anyway, they called my dad a holy roller. That's what made me mad.
Yeah.
They called me one. I didn't care. And they did praise the Lord a little bit. Now they got praise and worship. Don't sound like praise or worship to me. But that's just my own little bit.
Yeah.
But they did practice a little feeling in their services, and maybe were a little exuberant on occasion. But I didn't like the name Holy Roller, and it bugged me when people call us that. But anyway, some of the people in the church took offense to my dad letting me sing in the church. and still do that program. They called it the Devil's Music because I sing in country music.
Yeah.
And so I went and told old Julian Hayes, the owner of the station, I said, man, I've got a problem. It may end up me having to quit this program because I don't want to affect my dad's church. You know, his ministry had a good thing going there, you know. And I told him what the deal was, and he said, well, he said, I don't even understand your story. He said, we're a Jewish family. We got, you know, we believe in God, but we got a whole different set of things than your Assembly of God people do. But he said, would it help or make a difference if I gave you a Sunday morning program singing church music? And I said, sure, it might. I was thinking about the $10, you know, for those spots.
Yeah.
And so he gave me a Sunday morning program doing gospel stuff. And I was raised on normal gospel songs. I knew tons of those. So I had 2 radio programs my last 2 years of high school across in Arkansas.
And people no longer, it didn't matter then.
It didn't make any difference. And half that mail was from church people that didn't think it was right singing devil music on the radio. And anyway, that kind of mixed me up a little bit. But I went out and I never failed to sell a $10 spot. I couldn't do but 6 programs.
Right.
But I never went to call on anybody that didn't buy one of those spots. And I had 2 car dealers, and I was green as gourd. I didn't know about it. I had to write my own script, what I was going to say about them. And I said the same thing about both of them car dealers. Best car dealer in the southeast Arkansas. You can't get a better deal anywhere you can get here. And I read the same thing
for the other one.
His competitor. So Julian called me in and he said, you might ought to review, you know, what you're writing on these people. He said, they're great ads. He said the same thing about 2 guys as direct competitors. So you need to think up something different to say about them. Don't say either one of them are the best there are because you got 2.
Right.
So he gave me a little lesson on
how to
selling advertising. So I got an advertising lesson. I got a lesson on church people opposing the devil's music. I got a lesson on being there on time, ready to pick and sing. When the minute hit on that clock, you had to be picking. So I learned a whole bunch right at that radio station. But I was the biggest tither in the Cloverdale Assembly of God Church in Crossett, Arkansas for 2 years because I gave my pickers $5 a piece, and I kept the rest of that money. I had 2 programs. I was selling 6 spots each. That's $60 for each one. I was taking in $120, and I was giving my pickers $10 a piece out of that. There's 3 of them. So I was making more money than my dad ever thought about making pastoring that little church. In fact, I've still got a logbook of all the money he made through 1948. And it was $4 or $5 a week.
Right.
But you get a hamburger for a nickel and Coke for a nickel. And if you went out to eat, that's what you went out to eat.
Yeah.
You wasn't thinking about a ribeye steak or a king cut prime rib. I didn't know there was one. My dad called bologna round steak.
Yeah.
So we thought when they fried bologna, we was eating some steak. We didn't really think that, but I mean, it was.
So was it in Arkansas, or I remember talking to you in the past, when did you meet, or where did you meet Johnny Cash? Because talking about Arkansas.
Well, I graduated from high school in Crossett, Arkansas in 1953. And this is another thing, you know, I don't brag on anything I've ever done. I thank God for everything I've ever done because I think he led my footsteps without me even asking him. He knew where I ought to be and what I ought to be doing.
And that's still true today.
And I believe I still go with that. He put me in places where I met people I wasn't necessarily trying to be. I never set out to say I had some goals. I started to tell you a while ago, I had a few things I wanted, like I wanted a diamond ring because I liked when I seen somebody with a diamond ring, that impressed me.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted a Gibson guitar because we had old cheap guitars, most of them no names. Got a K, we finally thought we'd arrived when we got that. And that wasn't a lot better than we had. I wanted me a Gibson guitar, a diamond ring, and I always dreamed about a Cadillac car. And I said, if I can get them things, I'll be happy in my life. When I got that radio program, first thing I done is I bought a diamond ring, a quarter of a carat, for $60 at Trammell Jewelry Store in Crossett, Arkansas. I had a job at the Piggly Wiggly store too. when I had the radio program.
Right.
I walked from the school to the Piggly Wiggly every day, and I passed Trammell Jewelry Store. I stopped and looked in that window. One day, Mr. Trammell come out, and he said, and by then they knew who I was because I had a radio program. And he said, Jay, I see you every day. Stop and look in that window. What are you looking at? And I said, I like that ring right there. And he said, you make any money off that radio program? I said, yeah. And he said, do you get paid to do that radio program? I said, yeah, I get paid to do it. He said, can you pay $5 down, $5 a week? And I said, yeah. He said, well, come on in, we'll fit it up for you. So I bought me a diamond ring when I was in the 11th grade. So that was my first dream come true. Then my brother and I saved $quarters and bought us a Gibson ES 125 guitar. And by then he was playing a banjo and an accordion. So I was playing the guitar.
Right.
So basically both of our together we bought it. But it was mine, I played it. So I had a guitar and had a diamond ring. It was a bigger step to get that Cadillac. But I did get one. And it was pink and white, and it was a Fleetwood that had black and white interior. And I bought clothes to match it. I was working in, making me some money after I graduated from high school and went back to California. But as soon as I graduated, my folks knew I was going to leave because I was going to tell you, Julian Hayes called me in there about 2 months before school was out. And he said, man, I just want to tell you something. He said, we have never liked Arkansas since we've been here. He said, we're New Yorkers. We can't get that out of our blood. He said, I've sold the station. And he said, we're going to be moving back to New York. And he said, they know about you. They've heard your program. And they think they'll probably want to keep you. But he said, I can't guarantee they will. When they buy it, it'll be theirs. And they were going to take over like 2 months after school was going to be out. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, what I'm going to do when Julian leaves, I'll leave.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to California. So my graduation present from my mom and dad, they raked and scraped and bought me the biggest Samsonite suitcase they made at that time. And when I graduated, I had $140 and I bought me a bus ticket. And I took that Gibson guitar and an amplifier and a lap steel. It was a silver tone that I'd bought ordered from Sears Roebuck. And I got me a Greyhound bus station ticket and I headed California. And that was in 1953. So I wound up, got drafted in the Marine Corps in 1957. But in 54 and 55, I was playing. I played at Knott's Berry Farm, and I played on a program called Cal's Corral. There was a guy named Cal Worthington. These guys started saying all the good guys wear white hats. He was a Dodge dealer and a Ford dealer in L.A. Had this program on KTTV, which was Channel 5. And you got to be really old to remember that. And most people that I know today are not. But anyway, I got a job playing the guitar on that program. And I made $12, so it wasn't for the money.
Right.
Because I had a job that was paying me a lot more than that. But I met everybody from the Grand Ole Opry, everybody from California that played music and were professionals. They were guests on his show. It was a pretty big show, pretty good show. And he had a lot of popularity. He'd get his suits at nudies, and he wasn't rhinestone, but he had pinstriping around the little moon pockets. We used to call them, have little arrows at the end of them. He'd wear a white suit, white hat, red necktie, red sharp-toed cowboy boots. He'd come out to banging on the hood of them cars and do his own commercials.
Right.
But he'd come out and one day he'd come out leading about a 4-foot alligator on a leash. He'd come out with a bobcat or a monkey. Chimpanzee was my favorite. But everybody thought he was about half crazy, but he's just smart as a whip, and he knew how to get your attention. And if he walks out with an alligator, you're going to listen to what he says.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it's about a car,
You're going to want to know what he says just because he's got an alligator.
That's the whole thing.